Hi there, thanks for joining us today on the Event Manager podcast. I am delighted that you are listening to this episode of the podcast that features Marta Gomes, the newly elected ICCA President and Deputy Executive Director Sales Division at VIPARIS. The ICCA Association, if you're not familiar with it, is the International Congress and Convention Association, whose members tend to be venues and destinations. And so the really core kind of element of this podcast is the thought about having a vibrant membership within the association and how that really makes for a prosperous association. I cover a lot of topics with Marta, including the business model of VIPARIS and Paris as a global business city. We talk about creating partnerships with associations and also connecting with the associations themselves, who are really the clients of the ICCA members. We talk about the need for the meetings industry to build back better, including innovating the ICCA model and Marta's plans around that. And we talk about why engagement is the best measure of any association's success. And ultimately, we talk about why it's important for people to feel that the meetings industry is vibrant, and so they want to be part of it. Hope you enjoy this conversation, and don't forget to check out all the other episodes of the Event Manager podcast on our website or on any podcast service that you subscribe to. Hello, welcome to this edition of the Event Manager podcast by Skiff Meetings. I'm Miguel Neves, the editor-in-chief of Skiff Meetings, and I'm delighted to have with me today Marta Gomes, the ICCA President, newly elected, and Deputy Executive Director, Sales Division at VIPARIS. Marta, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Miguel. And I see that we share our Portuguese origins, because you pronounce my name very well.
Yes, not everybody's going to pronounce it that way, but it's nice to have a fellow Portuguese person on the podcast. I think it's a first. So delighted to have you. Would love to start by getting an introduction from you. I mean, you have a very interesting career, and obviously you were just elected ICCA president, so congratulations. Thank you. I'd love to get your kind of journey through that, and I think that always inspires people and understands, why we're having you as a guest as well.
So I'm I have a kind of an international background because as I said, I'm Portuguese, but my mother is Brazilian, so I have lots of family over in Brazil as well. And my parents chose quite early for myself and my brother and sister to attend an international school. So from the age of 3, I attended a British school in Porto, and then went on to study in the UK. And when I left university, I wanted to be a diplomat, because I always thought, the international cooperation and the collaboration was really interesting. And I ended up in Paris to do an internship and to perfect my French, because I had kind of English schoolboy French at the time. It was not so great. And that's where I discovered events, because I was doing an internship at the Portuguese Bureau for Promotion of Commerce. And we were doing lots of different events to promote Portuguese textiles at the time. And so I discovered the international exhibitions and conferences and absolutely loved it. So in the end, I ended up being working for the convention center. So I've spent 20 years in different roles at convention centers in Paris, promoting Paris as a destination and getting international events to come to Paris. So in the end, I ended up not being a diplomat, but being a kind of ambassador for my city. Yeah. And that's been really fun. I really enjoyed it.
Really interesting. I noticed one thing that you said there. So I'd like to get a little bit deeper into what VIPARIS is, because I think it's not necessarily that obvious. We know some of the convention centers, or at least I know some of the spaces, but I know it covers, I think, 10 or 9, soon to be 10 spaces, right?
10 spaces, yeah.
But also, you mentioned you worked in a Portuguese company or government organization, kind of promoting Portugal in terms of business. And I wonder if that was important in terms of your development in the meetings and events industry, because I think a lot of people come at it from more of a hospitality background and more from a hotel background. But a lot of the conversations that we have are about really looking at meetings and events as real business generators, as really making an impact in business. And I think coming from that background, has that been something that has always been, obvious to you, or sort of like a steady thing throughout your career?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, my first experience really was gathering sort of the Portuguese companies that wanted to be to access the international markets and exports and grow their business internationally. And that's why they attended events. So we organized Portuguese pavilions at different exhibitions here in Paris or in different places. And it was always about sort of this, the business connections, the visibility, and making Portuguese brands more well-known. So I think that you're absolutely right. I think it's not, for me, it hasn't never really been that much about the actual sort of logistical side of it, but the really why we do events, and that's what I find really interesting is the people as well, and that I get to meet so many really interesting people who are like the either trying to do something, their business better, but also to in the sort of the Congress side of it as well, to share knowledge and scientific excellence. And this is what has attracted me really from the beginning, is this aspect of sort of bringing the world together to collaborate and to innovate and to do better.
Brilliant. So tell me a little bit about VIPARIS, the structure. VIPARIS, yeah.
It exists since 2008, and it was actually a merger of two different companies that managed conference and exhibition centers here in Paris. So it was has been really interesting journey for the company as well, because it allowed us to really manage all the big spaces. So we have 10 conference and exhibition space centers, and some are very large exhibition centers, some are very small more boutique kind of spaces for smaller events. So there's quite a big range, and they all have their specificities, and allows us to really advise an event organizer on what would be the best fit for their event in terms of what they're trying to achieve. And this has been an interesting. So this creation of this larger company was an opportunity for us to be more stronger as a destination, and to have less sort of competition amongst centers here in Paris, and to be more sort of outward focused, and allowed us to really develop the international markets since the creation in 2008. And then in the meantime, it's a company that is always investing, is always looking at the future. We built recently, and I was quite involved in that, a new convention center that opened in 2018 that's been very successful, that we've attracted we've done a 5-year plan to attract the biggest international congresses to Paris. And we're opening a new center next year in 2023. So it's a company that has a lot always with new development and investment in the destination, and of course Paris is a great city to work for.
Yeah, I can imagine having 10 venues to choose from is a real kind of luxury in terms of when clients kind of come to you. Can you explain a little bit? Is it a private company, public company? What's the structure? And I guess what I'm trying to get to is that idea of helping others do business. I think that's kind of important from that perspective, right? But maybe start by just explaining the structure of the business structure of the company.
So it is managed as a private company, but we have it's a bit of a mix. We have two shareholders. One is a company that is called Unibail-Rodamco Westfield. They manage shopping centers in different locations in Europe and the US. So that's the kind of the more business side of it. But the other side is the Paris Chamber of Commerce. Yep. So again, it's a lot about sort of helping the Parisian and French companies to grow and to do international business. And so the Chamber of Commerce side of it as well is also as important as the sort of the business side.
Yeah. And do you also, or does the company also get involved in organizing its own events, or is it just the centers?
We're just, or we just host events. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Because, I find it really fascinating how different, I guess, countries and cities kind of take different approaches, right? So you have the German model where you have, I think it is 8 or 9 big cities that have massive convention centers, and they're essentially publicly funded. And then they organize a lot of huge events themselves, right? So it becomes like they generate the business themselves almost. And then you have, I'm more familiar with, for example, the London and Partners example in the UK, right? Where it's very much a sort of private enterprise business kind of organization where you're kind of touching all these different markets, but you're not publicly kind of investing in them necessarily, right? And where do you think that the VIPARIS kind of model sits in all of that?
We're quite similar to the UK one in the sense that Paris has a very long history of events, and there are lots of different companies in terms of exhibition organizers, and PCOs have existed for many years in the city. So there wasn't really as you say, it's the sort of private enterprise aspect of it has been historically quite strong in our destination. So wasn't necessarily a need for a public kind of
that makes sense.
Organization to take care of that.
I guess with big cities like London and Paris, with so many businesses there anyway, it sort of makes more sense to have that model. Somewhere like Hanover, and no offense to Hanover, of course, but Hanover, they have to build a big fair about X, like farming or whatever it is that they do, and then people come there. So I think that's a completely different model. So I just find it really fascinating.
If we think of exhibitions, a lot of the shows that are organized here often have already a kind of a federation behind it, so for the fashion, or for winemakers, lots of different, all the different the major sectors where Paris has world leading shows. There often is a kind of association or federation behind that is a sort of the event organizer in the end. There is probably a kind of a reader or a Comexposium there somewhere as well, but there in the background there's always also a federation.
That makes lots of sense. Is on the B2B side, what would you say are the kind of most one or other or more kind of iconic shows that are sort of people can think of Paris? Are there any shows that kind of stay in Paris and you really feel like that's a real iconic show that people associate with Paris?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I gave some examples of sort of the fashion industry has quite a few shows that are to do with starting even from the actual textile business, the beginning part, like a Première Vision, or then to the kind of finished product with a Who's Next exhibition. Exhibitions to do with food and wine, quite important. Sort of Cial is a world leading show in the food industry that's held every 2 years, and it's a recurring event in Paris. They also have other shows in the rest of the world, but the big flagship is here in Paris. In aeronautics, so the Paris Air Show is quite well known as well. We're looking forward to hosting that one again next year after COVID. And then events in sort of security. So there are lots of different branches where France is has quite a lot of
that makes sense.
Big industrial companies and kind of a world leadership where it makes sense for the shows to be held here.
That makes sense. Yeah, I was fortunate to be at the cardiology, your ESC cardiology event. I think it was 2018 at VIPARIS. 19? 19, yeah. Wow. Okay, so that was right before the pandemic.
Right before, exactly. Yeah. And of course, that the medical aspect is also super important. And France has a long history of hosting international congresses, has always been a real congress city. And France is quite, in the sense that it's we also host a lot of the French congresses of the different medical specialities, but they tend to take place in Paris annually and not move around so much like in other European countries, which means we have a very close relationship with the French scientific community as well.
Yeah, right. So I guess makes a lot of sense. So changing topics slightly, but a bit of a fun question. When you speak to your family or friends, and they're not kind of involved in the industry, is it like, what do they think you do?
What I tell them is that my job is bringing the world to meet in Paris. So I guess, it's having the spaces where people can have amazing events. And I try to take my kids actually to some events so that they see a little bit of what it is that I do. But it's about bringing everybody to the city, and then I think that they kind of understand it.
I think I asked this question quite a few times, and I think particularly on the planner side, I think a lot of people's families and friends just don't really understand, what it really means. Or there is this thing called the meetings and events industry. It's a bit nebulous, but I guess with venues, it's a little bit more straightforward.
It's a bit easier, exactly, because there's something concrete that you can go and see.
Exactly.
They can see an auditorium and they can see an exhibition center and they kind of understand, even though they probably associate it more with the sort of the events that are more sort of B2C and like the shows or but they don't really understand exactly what it is and what happens there, but they see the actual physical space. So it is easier to understand on the venue side.
There's a building, you rent out the building, and there's certain things that happen there, and then that happens. So going along that theme, I mean, what makes an event at VIPARIS or at one of the VIPARIS events, what makes it kind of different? Like, what is the contribution that an event space like VIPARIS can really do to an event, to really make it stand out?
I think that I would say that first of all, there's the city, and that I think that's a really important element of.
You can't really separate those things, right? That comes with the package.
Exactly. Yeah. And these are things that, when I'm looking at, for example, when I'm recruiting someone, it's they kind of have to love the city. That's one of the basic things. It's also this part of when selling the destination is also being kind of in love with your city and knowing
and being a good host in many ways, right? So you're kind of hosting people in that city, right? Yeah.
So, I mean, we're really lucky. I mean, it's a city that has lots of, it's a super, in terms of the monuments and things to visit, and the sort of art de vivre, as we say in French. There's lots of great experiences you can have here in terms of food and shopping and nice hotels and lovely walks. The experience of the city is really good, but it's also a city it's not just, about the sort of touristic aspects of it and the fact that it's fun to come here. It's also a really dynamic business city, Paris, and with a lot of startups, a lot of innovation, a lot of creativity, a lot of people who work here and who work in sort of knowledge economy. So it's a dynamic business city as well, and so I think that also helps in terms of getting the right people to come to events, and of course, the accessibility aspect of it as well. I think more than ever, the fact that we have great train connections makes it, for all Europeans coming to travel here, it's really great to be able to just take the train and be here in 2 or 3 hours and not have to fly. I think that's becoming also an important and
now, especially
but then
within France as well.
Especially with the sustainability, exactly, and within France, exactly. But then I'd say in terms of the sort of venue aspects and some of the things that we look at in terms of keeping our venues successful for the future, it's investing in things like technology, of course, the having the best Wi-Fi and the capacity to do hybrid events. Since COVID, we've invested quite a lot in this kind of technology, but also creating experiences. And this is something that we've launched already 5 years ago, a startup incubator called the French Event Booster, which is dedicated to the events industry, where we host and incubate startups that offer services that are specific to our industry, and that's helped us have lots of inspiration and create a kind of an ecosystem where we bring our customers together with these startups to give them ideas of, and we do conferences and events about future topics that could be interesting to think about in terms of creating better experiences for visitors and exhibitors. And this has led to things like we've transformed recently since COVID some of our venue space into these into immersive spaces. Okay. So I can give an example. We opened at Porte de Versailles, which is one of our bigger exhibition centers, a space called Jam Capsule, and it's a 360-degree screen, and so immersive space where there are different film creators create a 40-minute capsule where you can come and be inspired for like a short moments. And these are events these are spaces that can be that are open to the public, where you can buy a ticket and come and visit. So it means the venues are open to everybody, even when events are not going on. But also for people attending events, they can have a little after exhibition moments, or to spend a bit of time sort of doing something completely different, in their day at visiting an event. So we're looking at how we can do more of this and help and inspire our customers to do these kind of spaces within their events as well. So that I think that post-COVID, it's super important to create a real some memorable moments at events, so that people come and when they go home, they remember something a bit different, and they've had an experience, and they know why they made the effort to come.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Apart from just attending events.
The startup incubator, that's actually at one of your venues. There's an actual kind of office space.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Interesting. So you actually made me think of something. I was at Event Tech Live, a relatively small show in London for event technology. It was at London Excel for the first time. And London Excel, I don't know if you're familiar with the venue, it's kind of like a long venue with lots of different kind of halls on each side. And what I kind of realized when I was there was that it felt a little bit like being in almost like a B2B shopping mall. Because I walked in and I think there must have been 10 or 12 different events happening. All, relatively small, maybe 1,000, 2,000 people each kind of thing. But you walked in and there was there was the business show, and there was this other farming show, and this farmer show, and there was these things. And then there was Event Tech Live. And it kind of suddenly made sense that these centers, because I kind of see the big venues as being like, okay, when there's this big show, it's full and it's full of people and it kind of comes to life. But when there isn't a big show, it sort of sometimes is quite empty. But I could see how it was very flexible, and it kind of had all these different things happening, and it made sense to me. Like the shop still worked, the restaurants worked, because there was all these kind of smaller shows filling it up and making this, I don't know if it's a weird analogy, but this kind of mall for businesses in a way. Is that how you see your venues, or how they work kind of most of the time, or are they more about the kind of like bigger shows that kind of take over the whole spaces?
Oh no, we have most of our venues are very multi-event as well. I think that's super important as well in looking to the future. Is having had this flexibility to host many events at the same time. They each have their own kind of experience in their own space. I think that's we have to adapt to whatever our customers want.
But then having common spaces where different people can have food or whatever they need to do and kind of do their thing. Right?
And I think this is something that we've also learned a lot from our one of our shareholders, which is this shopping mall company. So,
exactly.
And I kind of agree with you. There are similarities in what we do, in the sense, if we think of a shopping mall, it's the shopping mall is the actual space and has its own sort of responsibilities in terms of the visitor experience, which are the food courts and the reception area and all of and then each shop kind of does their own, and it's similar to an event in the sense that you have the organizer who's in charge of the sort of registration and content, and then each exhibitor creates their own little space where they also need to engage with the visitors. So there are similarities in these two business concepts. And I think one of the things that we've looked to when we're investing in transforming our spaces, it's also about creating a kind of 365-day experience where people we try to attract people every day of the year, and not just when there are events. So in terms of the investments that we've made, it's been about bringing better restaurants that Parisians will come to. So I can give you an example of our most recent pavilion that we opened in, just before pandemic as well, in November 2019. It's Pavilion 6 of Porte de Versailles. So it's an exhibition hall, but the roof is an urban farm.
Nice.
It's actually Europe's largest rooftop urban farm where we grow fruits and vegetables that are used in the venue. There are plots where Parisians can come and grow their own fruits and vegetables. And on this rooftop space, we also built a small event space that we manage, and a rooftop bar. It's called Le Perchoir, and this, when events was not yet going on after COVID, it was open a bit earlier than everybody else, and has been super successful because it was a cool space for Parisians to come and have some cocktails and some food, and it has really worked very well in terms of creating a synergy between Parisians and event visitors. And at the moment, it's there's a whole mix of people who come and use this space and have a kind of after work experience for events. But it's and a lot of this is we're trying to do this in every single one of our venues to open them more to the city and to have them be places where people want to come and meet, even if they're not attending a show.
Really interesting. I mean, as you're talking, I'm sort of seeing this real blend of B2C and B2B happening. Is that kind of like a conscious part of your strategy?
Absolutely, and I think exactly, and like this idea of immersive experiences, or having at the moment we have we used to do these only during the summer. In our some months where we didn't have events, we would have a kind of cultural or exhibitions for Parisians. With I can give you a few examples. We had the Smurfs experience, or the Tutankhamun exhibition, and now we're doing these more and more. At the moment, we have a Friends, the Friends TV series experience exhibition. So it's blending, B2C in the sense of also bringing Parisians into the venues as well.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, as you said that, I also thought museums. So it's like shopping malls, museums, convention centers. They're all spaces where you help people gather around some kind of topic, right? So ultimately, they're not that different, even though we look at them in very different ways. But if you can merge them and make them useful, I mean, essentially, you have to keep the spaces busy, right? The spaces have to make sense commercially. So of course, it makes a lot of sense to bring all these things together. Fascinating. I think that's definitely a conversation for the future. So let's talk a little bit about your ICCA journey. I think, if you don't mind, if you could explain for anybody listening who doesn't know what ICCA is, if you could give a short introduction and talk to us a little bit about your journey, and then we can talk a bit about your plans for the future.
So for those who don't know, ICCA, it's the International Congress and Convention Association. It's an association that was founded in the 1960s already, so it's been around for a while. And it was started with the idea of collaborating and sharing knowledge about international rotating congresses. Yeah. So the founding members thought, there's these events and they're interesting and they go from one city to another, and why don't we share some of our experiences so that we're better at bidding and hosting bidding for and hosting these events. And that's how it started. So, and 60 years later, it's still going, and so we have a database of more than 12,000 international rotating congresses where we have loads of data about their history, where they've been, or the dates and contact details.
And these tend to be
useful tool.
Association events, right? Or medical association academic kind of
not just medical
events.
Yeah, exactly. Association rotating events, exactly. Yeah. And so it started in a kind of a commercial with a kind of a commercial objective, and that's still a strong part of what's it about and why people join. Mm-hmm. But it's also become more about sharing and collaboration on other topics and things like, what are the future trends and how we can work better together, and because it's these, when we share information and we gather people in events, we also create relationships between people that have the same job, that do the same thing in different places of the world, and then creates this opportunity for also sharing knowledge on lots of different other things, and having access to a kind of a network and worldwide community of people that do the same as you do, and that you can call whenever you have a question. And so that's really valuable, I think, for our members.
And the members are mainly kind of destinations and convention centers, and those kind of businesses tend to be members.
All this kind of supply chain of international events. Destinations, convention centers, but even people who make, do registration, or sort of tech companies, or who do the lanyards for conferences, really transportation. So the whole, and anyone who's involved in the supplying services for international congresses. And recently we also created a community of with the associations as well, the organizers themselves, so that, because it seemed weird not to have them as part of our community. And so that this is a more recent addition. So we have now around 400 associations who are also members of our association community, where we engage with them and we share, with this topics of discussion are similar. So makes sense to have them with us.
I've always felt, ICCA, I went to my first ICCA Congress in Krakow, which was great. And I wrote about that as well. So it was nice to kind of see.
Really?
It was my first, yes. You sort of, you go to lots of, there's a sort of a, event circuit that the industry does, and you sort of go to a lot of them, the IMXs and the MPIs and things like that. And then ICCA was one that I'd never been to for whatever reason, but a lot of people there were familiar to me. So I felt very welcome, and the ICCA community was very welcoming. So I very enjoyed that. But I've always felt that ICCA was this unique place where I guess conversations could be had between suppliers, as you said, the supply chain, that couldn't be done in other places, because there wasn't so much of a, I guess, competition element, or it was more kind of learning from each other. I think now with having the associations there, it makes lots of sense. You're sort of talking about association events. To have the associations there makes total sense. But do you feel that that's sort of changed the conversations in some ways?
No, I don't think so, because I think that there are still sort of, there are still spaces where you can have those conversations that are sort of the non-competitive and collaboration conversations amongst peers within your sector, because we have sectors for each category of member, like the venue sector or the destination sector, and where we share lots of information and knowledge. But, when we think of things that are sort of general trends or challenges that we're facing, we're kind of facing them together. And I think that the same things that we are thinking about for the future, if we think of things like sustainability or impact of events, or, these are conversations that we should be having just amongst ourselves, because a lot of it we do in partnership with the associations as well. So I don't think that really changes anything in the way that we that we talk to each other, and our congresses and events tend to be, I think associations also feel welcome, because it's about the knowledge sharing, it's not really commercial. You're not there to sell them something. You're there to share and to work together and to collaborate on finding solutions together. So I don't think that, maybe that was a fear that we had in the past, but I think that we've really definitely got past it, and it's and we've understood that a lot of it is about partnership. Yeah,
I think that's quite interesting, because also the way you mentioned partnerships made me think that in some ways, if you look at the kind of business need of that association or the sector that association represents, when you partner with the association, where the venue and the city partners with the association to put on the event, you're sort of solving that need, or you're matching that need, or you're kind of like servicing that in some way. So it makes sense that you talk about how you can do that together. I guess ultimately the client, the association is the client, but if there isn't a business need or something that they have to do within that sector, nothing happens, right? The association doesn't just sort of put on events out of thin air, right? So in that sense, I think it's quite different from a corporate client that is very much more connected with the business of that corporation that's kind of putting on the event.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, and destinations have a really important role in helping associations when they come to the city to really connect with the local stakeholders, with the local community, even if they have community projects with the city. That's you can't do that really by yourself. An association can't really do it without the destination, and so a lot of these. And I think even if we think about sort of how we got through the sort of the COVID period, we realize, I think, that we need each other more and more, and that we're more successful when we work together.
Yeah, I like that. That's a very good message, and I think it makes a lot of sense. So, I mean, ICCA, like any association, has been through quite a tough period with COVID. I think it's been a tough time for the whole industry. I think one thing I did want to point out is that ICCA is probably one of the most international associations in the industry. I find a lot of associations are more focused either in North America or in other kind of regions, and ICCA, I think, for whatever reason, has managed to be very international. It really has a really diverse membership. But
Absolutely, yeah.
Would love to talk a bit about your plans. I mean, tough times, a couple of years, 3 years roughly of quite challenging times. Obviously, now you've just become president at the Congress, right? So that was in November of 2022. What's the future look like for you? What's your vision for where do you want to take ICCA?
So I think it's going to be an interesting time. As you say, it's been hard. It's been hard for associations, but also for all of the different companies in our membership. They've lived through a really difficult period the last 2 years. And now we're opening up again. And I think the most important thing now that we are opening again is thinking about how we can do things better, and how we shouldn't really be doing things, go back to doing things the way we did before, and how we're and I think there's a real opportunity for us to use ICCA as a platform for again sharing ideas and knowledge and doing and becoming sort of trying to achieve our goals and innovation faster, because we would do it together. Like many associations, this difficult period has meant that we've had to be more agile and make a lot of last minute decisions and pivot our international congress to go completely digital in 2020 to do a kind of experimental hybrid event with multi destinations in 2021. And now I think that we're coming back to in-person gatherings and to kind of the business of normal business of the association, as it were. That it's important to go back to listening to our members and what they need. So that's going to be my first project, is to have a member survey and focus group meetings to really listen to members and to hear from them what's important to them, what kind of services that we're providing, what's useful for them, what's not so useful, what we could be doing more and better. So that's going to be the first, because I think as we have quite an interesting board of directors that's very diverse, as we have all of the regions of the world that are represented, all of the sectors are represented. So I think that in terms of member representation, it's quite good. But I feel that it's time to kind of get really back to the source and to have our members be able to have their own individual voice in building our strategy together. And then, so these, in terms of priorities, are also about getting members to participate more than they did, because I think also in the last few years we've all been dealing with COVID. We're still at the moment dealing with reopening, and everybody's super busy, and so the challenge of the next year is also getting everybody back to participating in the life of the association and engaging and being more active in the community. The way I'd like to do that is also to look at allocating then possibly more resources to our regions, to our chapters, because these are also great places where people can network and have a first contact with the association and get to start to get to know the community. There's been a lot of turnover as well, if we think about it, in terms of the people who work in the because we're an organization membership, so our members are companies. But of course, associations are connected by people. They're not just an organization is only as participative as the people who make up the organization who participate in events. And we're looking also at the member data will give us some insights on this. Also, on maybe changing our membership model as well, to do something that's possibly more option-based and less a kind of a bundled one-size-fits-all membership, but to give members the possibility to add or buy certain services that they feel useful, and then or not if they think that they're not so useful. So
interesting, the unbundling.
And we're going through exactly, yeah. And at the same time, we're going through, and we've already started it, a kind of digital transformation of the association, where we're reviewing completely our website, CRM, and our famous database to make it more user-friendly. And we'll be delivering that middle of next year.
Yeah, I saw the presentation from Simple View, I think, at the Congress. It talked a little bit about that and big plans around that. So 2-year presidency. A lot of presidents, I hear, also do a second mandate. So we'll see if it's a 2-year or a 4-year, but we'll come to that, I'm sure, soon. But let's say it's 2 years, or at least, what would you like to see at the 2-year mark that would kind of be a good check mark for you? Like, yeah, this I've done a good job. I'm proud of what I've achieved.
I think that the fact that I've been quite involved with ICCA for a long time, because I've been involved for already 12 years, so that's a long time. In a volunteer position, I used to be in the France Benelux chapter and then represented Europe on the board, and I was vice president, and now I'm a president. It means that it's not such I don't have that. I think we can. I don't have such a learning curve, and I hope to be able to deliver things quite fast, because there's not so much, I know the association quite well, the staff, the board, and that we can be quite quick about delivering on some of these objectives that I was talking about. I think that what I'd like to see and it's a little bit about measurement and data is we have a community that seems, we have a kind of intuition that they're very engaged and that we do lots of things and people participate a lot. I'd like to see how much we can actually measure that through our CRM, our new CRM that we're implementing, and to be able to see, well, where we are now, and then maybe in a year's time, how we've progressed. And because I think the participation in association activities, in terms of people using our database, coming to our events, or engaging in projects, innovation projects, and all different things that we do, is really a measure of success of the association. It's that's what we're here for, and I'd like to be able to have some tangible data that we can use to talk about that.
Yeah, I love that. I think engagement as sort of a measure of success, I think, is really, really powerful, because as you say, you can have all the nice features advertised and you can have all the nice press, but if people aren't actually using things, then the association kind of doesn't have as much importance in a lot of people's minds. You mentioned something quite interesting earlier, about the listening to the members. And I think that's always a great place to start. But I wanted to maybe ask a little bit of a tricky question in terms of, what if the members ask you to do something that I guess the board or the team doesn't see as a direction for the association? Because I've seen this happen in some occasions where, you ask members what they want, and actually members want to kind of go in a completely different direction. How do you figure that out, right? How do you balance that out in terms of, is it just totally whatever the members want the association will do, or how do you balance it with what the association, the staff, and the board think is the direction for the association?
I think it really is about the members. We're in a member association, and I think this is. Of course, I would have to have, if it would have to have quite a large percentage of members who are wanting to do this very different thing, and I think this is and I don't know if you were there when I at the General Assembly when I gave my presidential speech just before the election, but it was really about getting and to go back on our conversation about engagement. It was about telling members really, if you don't participate and if you're not. My real challenge is getting people to participate, and I hope that they will. And I will do my maximum effort to get people to participate. Because if we have a big critical mass of people who really want us to do something, then we do it. I mean, I think it seems obvious to me. It's not.
You're not expecting anybody to ask for anything so left field that it wouldn't make sense, right?
Or if they do, then it probably does make sense.
Yeah. No, it's a great approach. I mean, I've seen this happen at a number of places where you kind of, take a survey of the members, and then the members are kind of, in some ways, members can be kind of driven by the shiny light, like the bright light that's happening, or the industry is all about new technology, so let's become a technology association. I think sometimes that can be quite extreme when something is quite powerful. So that's really my question about. How do you balance that out? Because I think the board and the staff, I think, have a different vision on things a lot of times, and you kind of want to make sure that it aligns as much as possible.
Well, I think that, it's, I think people understand the purpose of ICCA in the sense that they probably wouldn't, change it completely. I mean, I've had loads of conversations with members during the campaign period. And I think that there's is a community that really understands the value of the association. And I think that there are things that we could do a bit better, that members would expect us to do maybe a bit better. But I don't think the idea is really to change completely, because it's an association that, the last 60 years, it's exists for a long time. And the main purpose of sharing and collaboration, and of course, this, I don't think it will change, that people still value that in the future. And they won't completely change direction either,
Yeah, I have to say the whole election process at ICCA is quite interesting. I mean, I don't know many associations that still have such a. It feels very
democratic process.
Yeah, but it's not even the sort of bureaucracy or admin side of things, but the real public nature of the campaigning, and the three candidates, and you make videos, you make kind of speeches, you make statements. It's very similar to a political campaign, right? To a political election in some ways. And I find that quite fascinating because, at least to my knowledge, most of these associations in the industry that I know don't do anything like that. There's a vote of some extent, but it's very much like, these are the people that have been experienced and have put themselves forward. Let's decide on who should be the next kind of president, right? It's very much more subdued kind of thing. So is that just a tradition thing with ICCA, or is that an intentional, I guess, sort of, raising some more PR eyebrows in some ways?
Well, I think it's a tradition. Of course, it is. It has always worked that way. But at the same time, I think it's quite an interesting one in sense, again, to come back on the engagement aspect of it, is that people feel that they really have a voice, and that they get to choose who represents them, and that they do it, for reasons they understand why, and what the fact that it's, as you say, we're very global, and so it's important for the member who is far from a head office in a country in Africa or Latin America or Asia, to feel that their membership counts. Mm-hmm. And I find that quite nice, that it's I think that and this year I thought it was a bit more than usual, because I think that online tools gave us a possibility to have more direct engagement with members. And so there are lots of conversations happening and presentations of the candidates via the chapters to the members. And they were quite well attended, these mm-hmm. events, and people were really curious and took the time to come and listen. And I thought that was, and again, I think we had great figures in terms of voting. Most more than 50% of the members voted, which is great. So yeah, I think it's quite a nice tradition in the sense that it allows members to really have a voice.
Yeah,
and to participate.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. So thank you for sharing that. So I want to start wrapping up. I have a couple of last questions, or one last question, and then one request. In terms of sort of challenges for the industry, are there any kind of big challenges coming up ahead that maybe less obvious that you think could be, really really a challenge, I guess, really a hurdle for the industry to overcome that you'd like to find a way to kind of overcome?
I think that well, of course, there are the obvious ones, and that we're all talking about, and that were a lot of the basis of our the program of our Congress this year, and where we talked about sustainability, of course, diversity and inclusion, and legacy and impact. So these are the big topics that we all need to address together, and to find solutions for, and then to look at roadmaps and detailed plans of how we're going to address these big issues. But I think some of the ones that we may be talking about a bit less are the kind of the talents and the HR issues that we're all facing. And I felt like that a lot of the conversations I've had with members in the last at shows, and you probably did the same, Miguel. You had, I'm sure that everybody's talking about this, is how we manage recruitment, retention, upskilling of our people, and how we keep our industry attractive for the future. Because I've had also conversations with event management schools where they have less students enrolling and signing up, and
Very
worrying. We've always been kind of a glamorous industry. People think, oh, we need events, it's cool, of course, not necessarily the sort of medical events. When people, they probably think like festivals, and but events have been a cool place to work for the last, as was advertising. There are some industries that
maybe the veneer has come off, right?
Factor. Yeah, exactly.
People know more now. The knowledge is more common that actually events are quite stressful. So maybe it's not so attractive as it once was.
And the fact that we were shut down during COVID, that was kind of scary. I think I can imagine that people saw the people getting laid off or furloughed and thought, well, is it really a kind of a safe place to work? And do I really want to have a career? And so I think that addressing this is it's about, of course, collaborating with schools and universities, and talking and having more communication about what it is that we do and why it's fun and why it's important. And also projects like involving the sort of younger generations of our members and using them as a way, as a voice. So yep. I'm very proud of our Future Leaders Council. I think they're an amazing group of people, and having sort of these younger generations in our boards, and talking and speaking at our events, and having a voice at the table, and participating in the important conversations. Yeah. And the program that we recently launched, and hasn't yet been much talked about, but we're trying to launch more and more sort of in-person training, is our ICCA skills program, which is to be able to train people faster and with less kind of effort from managers, because a lot of people come to our industry and they don't necessarily have a kind of any specific training, and it's often done by managers in the different companies and the departments. And if we can accelerate that and get people up to speed faster, I think that would be a great opportunity for us all to rebuild and our industry faster.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Very interesting point you made about COVID. Honestly, something I'd never really thought about that much. I guess I just assume every industry was impacted in some ways, but of course our industry live in-person events were much more impacted. So yeah, for a young person looking at that, it might not be super attractive to kind of dive into something that can be impacted like that, or that they saw being impacted like that. So just to kind of expand on that slightly, if you were giving advice to young people that were considering kind of joining this industry, what would you tell them?
I think it's a super rewarding industry. I mean, you get to see really the places where the really important conversations happen. I think events are really special. in that way, that you gather people for lots of different reasons that are about improving and growing their businesses, but also about innovation and scientific progress, and having the important conversations of society, addressing world problems in one room, and being the place where that happens. And also, I mean, it's an exciting industry to work for, in the sense that it's not one day is never the same as the other, and you're always looking to the future, and you get to meet with the world experts of absolutely every single industry in the world, and build relationships with them and get to listen to them. So I think that it's and it's an industry as well where you can quite easily progress in your career. I think you can start I remember having a conversation about it with someone who started out as a waiter at Disneyland, and thinking, being proud of how their job was to put kind of sparkles in glasses, or I don't know what it was exactly, but being a part of this, having a small contribution of a detail that is in a very large event, where they were contributing to something big and magical. And I think that you can start in whatever position, and quite quickly, learn new things and progress. And it's and interestingly, you don't necessarily have to have a specific kind of education for it. It's you can come from. We have the possibility of having really diverse people from almost any industry that can join ours and be successful if they are curious and they're passionate about connecting people.
Love it. Passionate about connecting people. I think that's definitely a qualification required. So just to wrap up, wanted to get from you recommendation for somebody we should have on the show. We love interviewing interesting people that are passionate about the events industry, or just events in general. Would love to get a recommendation from you.
Sure. So actually, I have someone in mind who I met recently, and she's called Kira Schilling, and she was the organizer of a startup event in Munich called Bits and Pretzels. That was previously in her career, and she's launched an online event. So I participated in the second edition that took place just yesterday and the day before. And it's called the Event Expert Circle. And it's a place where she brings tech companies that organize events, but not necessarily organize events, but tech companies that are interested about events and how they can be a place where you can showcase innovations and create transformation. So definitely Kira, I think she's a really interesting person. I think she would be a great person for you to talk to next.
Perfect.
And I'd be glad to share her.
Yes, please do share her contacts, and we'll make it happen. Marta, been a pleasure talking. Thank you for taking the time to catch up with us. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did, and I wish you lots of luck with the ICCA presidency. Maybe we'll have another round in a couple of years, and maybe you'll have your second term, and we can talk more about the plans for the future at that point as well.
That would be lovely. Thank you, Miguel. Really enjoyed it as well.
Thank you.